I really want to thank Warren Gilman, Chairman, CEO, and Director at Queens Road Capital Investment, and Ross McElroy, CEO, President, and Director at Fission Uranium, for joining me for the morning of day 2 of the 1-to-1 Hong Kong event. And we're just going to be having a nice little chat about uranium and its role. So thought we could start just looking at, your outlook for uranium. So if you want to do a quick, update on where you see pricing, supply, demand, all of that heading. Maybe Warren, if you want to start us off.
Well, good morning, all. Familiar faces in the audience. Good to see you, Ross. Amy, thank you for the invitation. I guess my view on where uranium prices is probably not relevant because I don't have an influence on them. I think the person we all need to ask is the latest CEO of Kazatomprom. Because he has some influence. I'm not quite sure how much. Maybe we should be asking the Kazakh government, or actually maybe we should just be asking Mr. Putin, since he seems to be in charge of everything. So the fact of the matter is the price of uranium will go wherever the Kazakhs want it to go. They have that much influence. This rally that we've enjoyed for the past year has been courtesy of the Kazakhs, with some cooperation from Cameco, but let's be honest and open, it wouldn't have happened without the Kazakhs, full stop. So we are here enjoying $70 a pound because of the Kazakhs. If they want it to go to 80, it will. If they want it to go to 60, it will. If they want it to go from one extreme to another, it will. And the rest of us have to just go along for the ride. I don't want to seem too pessimistic because it's a bull market and it's been a great ride. But I am concerned about the leadership of Kazatomprom and the revolving door that's been there for the last 2 years. It certainly suggests that although they are still on point with respect to their strategy, which is and has been consistently applied for about the last, I think, 5 years now, Ross, of value over volume, which we all know economically is the best strategy to pursue. They remain on point with that messaging. But as always, the proof will be in the pudding, and we'll see if they remain consistent in applying that strategy. It's difficult to say with that revolving door whether it will remain, in fact, the policy that they actually pursue. So let's wait and see. But I think we all remain hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely quite valid. I think they're obviously the powerhouse in the room with the Kazakhs. They dominate such a great deal of the market and can do so. But I think the price of the commodity has been going where we were all, all the predictions were going the way that it is. It's up 40% on the year. I guess we started the year at $50. It's $70. Seems to be marching upwards. I think the whole geopolitical situation is certainly causing maybe the more rapid climb in the price. Incidents in Niger lately with coup in the government, and where might that replacement uranium come from? I think these are all stresses that are going to continue making the price continue upwards. I keep hearing the incentive price of production, if you look at a global model, is still somewhere $100 or so, but that really doesn't take into account the power that the Kazakhs have, being able to almost produce as much uranium as they feel like. And I hope, as you say, hopefully they're taking the value over quantity notion. I mean, they've been applying it. Let's hope they continue with it. But I think we're in the right market. This is a bull market that's been long predicted, and I think it's still got a long way to go. And in our case, I think the emphasis is still going to be on North American assets coming into play as well to a greater degree than they might have been in the past.
Let me just follow up, Amy, with one further point. So the announcement last week that the Kazakhs will go to full production as of 2026. The reaction from the banks who follow the sector and the various consulting groups has been mixed on that. Interestingly, maybe a bit surprisingly, that the reaction has been mixed. I've seen the headline came out of B of A that said, "No obstacle to return to full production." That was their headline, which is cause for a little bit of concern because that's quite a few pounds coming onto the market by 2026. When you go on to read their report, they go on to say, but there will be ongoing shortages of sulfuric acid, piping, labor, transport bottlenecks. So they went on to list all the obstacles to returning to full production. But in their forecast, they had, from a supply side, full production coming on as per Kazakh guidance. And then you had some of the other brokers like Scotia that came out with a very skeptical analysis and said, look, there's no way on God's green earth that these guys are going to go back to full production. They can't even get back to 80% of production. They've struggled in the last couple of years to get back to 80%. There's simply no way. And in their supply forecast, they had just an incremental increase. It's kind of surprising that there's so much disagreement on what is, at the end of the day, a pretty simple and pretty transparent business. It's not as if we don't understand the Kazakh or haven't studied in depth the Kazakh production platforms, what they're capable of. It's a public company, and there has been a lot of disclosure over the years in terms of detailed production guidance and so on. So it really is a bit surprising, amusing, maybe disconcerting that we don't have a better insight into what their capabilities actually are. But needless to say, the point I'm making is that there is some degree of skepticism, as Ross says, that although there is an overarching theme of Kazakhs being able to produce, perhaps they can't meet their own guidance. As one person put it to me overnight, they said, well, coming out with a statement that says we are going to return to 100% of full production capacity by 2026 is something you might expect a new CEO who's come in to replace the CEO who just lost his job after 6 months. It's something you might expect to see from a company that is controlled by a government who has certain mandated requirements. That statement may not actually be met with performance. We'll see.
But, I wanted to just follow on, this talk about kind of bringing more production online, mine restarts as a result of some of these elevated prices. Do you see that actually happening, or?
Well, the restarts depends what we're looking at. Different places in the world can restart uranium at different prices. There's really no shortage of uranium out there. What there is a shortage of uranium at the prices that, say, exist right now, or even somewhat higher. I think there's a number of projects in Africa that they could come on, but you're still going to require higher prices. U.S., they're able to. I guess they're somewhere at the point right now where they can maybe break even or make a little bit of money at uranium prices where they are now. But there's certainly not a lot of volume in that kind of material. So I think some of the restarts are the old uranium deposits from the last, episode or last cycle that never did develop still probably require significantly higher prices and in order for them to make it go. So I think that's one of the issue, but development of some new projects and, I think are certainly on the horizon in the fairly near term. And, again, I'm thinking with ours, for example, or NextGens or some of the, the exciting projects in the Athabasca Basin, for example. I think those are certainly very close to coming on stream. They're not restarts; those are brand new projects, and I think they'll be the replacements for the older, mature mines in that area that are, they're kind of in their 70% usage in their life cycle. So,
yeah, I think the short answer, Amy, is we just don't have to worry about it. It's just a rounding error. It's just not relevant. I mean, you have Boss that's going to ramp up to 2 million pounds a year. That's not going to have any impact on supply in this market. You got Paladin that's going to ramp up, hopefully 4 million pounds a year. Again, it's a rounding error. The only material new production coming on stream is, as Ross mentions, Patterson Lake, and we're looking at 2028. So we're, 5 years away, maybe 4. But there is nothing of material significance that's going to come on stream between now and then. The U.S. restarts, there's 1 million pounds here, 2 million pounds there. UEC, I was just on the road with UEC back in June, and, when they decide to come back into production, and they still haven't. So uranium got up to over $72 a pound, and they still didn't pull the trigger. We're talking about a restart in Wyoming at 1 million pounds a year. And then maybe 2 years later, South Texas at another 1 million pounds a year. And that's become the 200-pound gorilla of U.S. production. Total rounding errors in terms of imminent supply onto the market. Longer term, they might be able to ramp up to 4 million or 5 million. But again, a rounding error compared to what's going to come out of Patterson Lake 5 years from now and what the Kazakhs are planning to do. But frankly, even what the Kazakhs are planning to do, I mean, we're talking about in the order of 6 to 10 million incremental pounds a year. It's somewhat of a rounding error in terms of increasing demand. So the supply-demand situation, even in a pessimistic scenario, is looking pretty good, I think.
So I thought we could kind of change themes a little bit. So a lot of the talk around uranium comes from government, other industry leaders, talking about nuclear's role within the energy transition, but also as kind of a secure source of energy. So how would you say that these two different kind of discourses will help to change perceptions about nuclear or strengthen the industry's role as a kind of a key source of energy moving forward? Maybe Russ, if you want to.
Sure. Well, I think nuclear is becoming more and more accepted as the realization is that there is no path to net zero carbon without going through nuclear. It's a key part of the whole energy transition to get off, the transition away from fossil fuels. I think nuclear is an absolute key component. I think you look at all the renewables with wind, solar, even if they work, they're kind of a smallish component of it, at least currently. But I think the economics behind them are certainly not really panning out. But nuclear, again, base load energy. It's clean, green. It's getting a new banner. We've always promoted as being a clean fuel, but it's really only recently that I think that has worked its way into the psyche worldwide, and it's in the government policies now that nuclear is a key part of the energy equation. It's classified as green energy in the European Union. So for example, but it's part of the new renaissance. Again, we've spoken for as long as I've been in the business about the importance of nuclear and its clean green, but it's really only in the last few years that I think that's becoming a key part of it. And with the electrification of everything that we're seeing in the world, I think there's that's the future for uranium really couldn't be better than we see it.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. It seems there's universal acceptance that nuclear power is the future. Only 3 jurisdictions come to mind that haven't quite got with the program. Germany, who continue to go their own way. That doesn't seem to be stopping the EU at all. So the EU is progressing on the nuclear front without Germany, which is great to see. And that's important because that's significant pounds. The second one would be Australia, who, the debate has started, but, they're certainly well behind the curve, and I welcome any comments from the audience about the future of nuclear in Australia. At the end of the day, it's not particularly relevant because we're not talking about many pounds coming from Australia in any event. But it's interesting to see that debate unfold. And the third one is Quebec, which even in the Canadian context, when Canadian is highly nuclear, biggest nuclear plant in the world is across the border in Ontario, and it's about to double at Bruce Power. But Quebec, obviously benefiting from an abundance of hydropower, they said, we're going to remain nuclear free. Well, that's great because they have the benefit of another green renewable energy source, so good for them. I don't think that necessarily means they should be anti-nuclear, but they're maintaining that stance, oddly enough, but from the benefit of a rich resource. Germany has less of a leg to stand on since they're benefiting from a hugely negative, from an environmental standpoint, resource. But apart from those, and none of those have any impact on pounds, there's virtually universal acceptance that nuclear is the future, and so we're going to see more growth in terms of extended life of plants that we're going to shut down, expanded plants that currently exist, new plants, and then the whole world of SMRs that in the longer term, medium to longer term, are going to have a huge impact on pounds.
Yeah. And so, I thought we could talk, we have the benefit of having, a seasoned investor as well as working operator within the industry. So I thought you could talk a little bit about, what does it actually take to get a project up and running? Maybe you can share some examples.
Oh, Ross, over to you for the next 30 minutes now.
Yeah, I mean, well, okay. So for a little bit of context, we've got a development project in fission uranium. It's in the Athabasca Basin. We're at the point we're deep into the permitting side of the equation. We view us as being a producing asset. It's on its way to being a mine, an operating mine, and in about 2029. That's what we're estimating on our timeline.
And when were the big discoveries?
Well, and that's where I'm getting at. So our discovery was in 2012. So November
2012 to 2029, 17 years with a project that, without doubt, from the very first day, was going to be highly economic in perhaps the best mining jurisdiction in the world to bring on a uranium project. That's how fast, slow.
It really is. No, it's such an important point. I mean, people just don't appreciate, I think, the timelines that it takes. It's not people; the governments don't seem to appreciate it. And in our case, a lot of the time spent to get from finding a resource and turning it into an operating mine is on the regulatory side. It's not easy. It's not fast. it's very, very doable where we are, but it moves at the pace of governments that I think it's an area we'd like to see increase. Make it a little bit more streamlined, I suppose, or shorter timelines. I think it has to happen, but it's a long process. I think we're in the best jurisdiction as far as understanding. If you have a project, it can get developed. It will get. There's great support at all levels for this, but it does take a great deal of time.
So if you're a mining engineer, you get to develop one uranium mine in your career. If you go into the uranium sector, you go into the gold sector, you might develop 5 or 6 mines in your career. Uranium, you only get one shot at it if you're lucky. Incredibly long lead time. So, again, longer term, the supply-demand fundamentals, that's one of the great obstacles / benefits to the industry, and that when you need the pounds, it's going to take a long time to get them.
I mean, closing off, I thought that we could, you talk about some of the, I suppose, barriers for, or kind of, what slows down the industry moving. And in a lot of the industry, it's often kind of the financing side that can slow things down. Where do you see kind of the investment into this space? Is it happening, and is it happening at the pace it's needed?
That's your
yeah. I mean, right now we're in a bull market, so financing is readily available. We made our first investment in the uranium sector, and I think it was 2016 when we made our first investment in NextGen. Back then, financing was non-existent, and I think uranium at the time was $30 a pound, going to $17 a pound. So it was non-existent, perhaps for good reason, because you had to have a long-term view on where prices were going, which we did, and we've been rewarded for it. We've got the benefit right now of Queen's Road Capital itself having 80% of our asset value in the uranium sector, just when we're in the middle of a bull market. So we've been fortunate in that regard. So there is capital available, but it's a recent phenomenon. As recently as a year ago, there was virtually no capital available. And so when we talk about mine development and how long it takes and how many years, capital needs to be available consistently over many years in order to progress a project. And if you have capital available 1 year in 10 or 1 year in 5, it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't give you enough capital to explore. It doesn't give you enough capital to develop a mine. Although the good times are right now, that is not the solution unless this remains for many years. And we'll see.
Yeah, similar to the case with NextGen. I mean, our discoveries are sort of on parallel paths and development and the need for capital. And again, we were very hungry for capital in 2016 with a crummy uranium market, no interest, no ability to raise money. And we had a strategic investment from the CGN, so the Chinese state-owned enterprise. And that allowed us to be able to stay quite busy developing and drilling and carrying on our economic studies on this long pathway to get to production. And that was in a terrible uranium market. Right now, it's relatively easy to everybody's kind of lining up. If you announce a $20 million financing, there's probably $40 or $50 million of demand right there. But these it's not always the way, and I can think back 3 years ago, it certainly wasn't the way. But it feels that way now. Hopefully, long may the these strong winds continue. But at the moment, it feels like a pretty good, fairly straightforward place to be able to get financing for your projects.
Well, I want to thank both Warren and Ross for their insights today. Ross is available for meetings if you want to find out any more about Fission's projects. They're just next door. And so thanks for joining us this morning.
And I would encourage everyone to go see Ross because it is a great project. So
right.
So you should go see him because
There
as Ross says, it will be a mine.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks, Warren, for the comments, and thank you.